Good morning, everyone. Wes here from Real Estate Geelong. I just want to touch on a topic today, and I'll bring in a lot of different people over the next few months so that we can hear what they've got to say in around property and all aspects of life, to be honest. But what I want to touch on today is I was speaking to a friend of mine who had a client that was considering selling, and they asked the valuer in to value their property. Now, given where we are right now, we're still amongst the COVID process in Victoria, and this is the same anywhere really in Australia. But the issue is that if you're getting a valuer in to appraise your property, what's the purpose that you're getting them in for? Is it just to understand what it's worth, or is it to understand whether you want to borrow against that property and do more? Now, I don't know in the circumstances of the client through the friend that I was talking about, but at the same time, straight away it triggered to me that I need to share some information with people so they can understand how this all works. With a valuer, valuers are asked by the bank to value a property for bank purposes. Now, they get paid very little to do that valuation, very little from the banks. They actually compete with it as a quota to make sure that they can have the assessments done, and they're virtually drive-bys, or they take about 15 minutes on a property to understand its value. And you can't do an appraisal of a property fairly in 15 minutes, and I don't care what systems they're using, it just doesn't allow them to do that effectively. But you've also got to understand that as a private company, the valuation firms have to carry indemnity insurance to make sure that if there's any errors in what they do, that their insurance steps in and they don't get hit by any claims from the banks. And they're doing a lot of assessments. So you're a client, for argument's sake, and you're selling a house and you need to sell your house, and it's been valued at $600,000, just to use a figure. And when it comes time to sell, it gets sold for $500,000. So the bank is short of where it needed to be. And so what they can do is they can then target the valuation firm's indemnity insurance to cover any shortfall. So if you were the valuation firm, what do you do to mitigate risk under those circumstances? Well, you downgrade the value. So you're not really going to say what the property's worth. You're going to put yourself in a position to protect where you're at. Now, this is even more so if the person that you're valuing the property for is looking to borrow against their property, because if they're borrowing against their property and using equity from the property, then it puts them at more risk, the valuers, because if anything goes wrong between that property and another property, because banks, what they call cross-collateralize those loans, they tie them together so that if you screw up on one, they're going to get you on the other, and they're going to sell both up. Now, if they can't sell either of those properties up for what the valuers have said they're worth, then the valuers are going to get hit. So they can't afford to have that happen. So because the main one that's being lived in right now before the investment property is being purchased is going to have some equity used from it, the valuer is naturally going to downgrade the valuation of that property so that when you borrow against it, you can't borrow as much, which doesn't put them at risk. So does all that make sense? So again, you've got to look at where the risk reward is for the person that you're dealing with in any of these circumstances, because if it puts someone at risk, then they're going to do what's necessary to make sure that they're not personally put at risk. So from a valuer's point of view, understand that they have to value the property conservatively for the bank, because they do not want to have their indemnity insurance hit if the property ever has to be sold and never reaches the value that they've put on the property. So if you're getting a valuation done during the COVID period, you can be guaranteed for sure that it will be valued way less than what it's really worth in the marketplace now to be sold to someone else. Hope that makes sense. That's my rant for today. Thank you. Bye for now.